which was 10 minutes from 12:04. 10 minutes from 12:04, I think, whatever. Hopefully, Councillor Colin Davis is back. I'm going to bail in there of you to get him out. That's what we do. We used to have in the council chamber, in the members' room. If they went out, we'd press the bell, get them back in. I don't know whether Colin's back. Oh, yep, Colin's there.
Yeah, back.
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, here.
thanks.
Okay. Back to the report then. Biotin, questions?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies. I'm actually taking us back to the previously approved statement, financial statement. So in page 208 of 280 pages under disabled facility grounds, I want an amendment to probably to be taken with the last column says the council will implement a contractors framework during 2023 to 2023. So I suspect it's 2023 to 2024. So I think the amendment should be incorporated. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Sorry, Biden, could you just clarify that query again, please?
So in page 208 of 280 page document that I have there, under it says disabled facility grounds. Item F, page 208 of that document. I don't know whether you can see it. It shows 108 of the financial statement, but it's page 208 from the.
I think they found it now, Biden.
Sorry.
They found it now, so Deb's going to respond.
So is it the right-hand side column where it says 2323 that is your query?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. We will amend that. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that, Biden. Councillor Simon Griffiths.
This is actually back to Porthcawl Harbour, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep.
Okay, so page 246. It just feels a bit uncomfortable having points 11, 12 and 13 in there, which says insert risk area, and then with no boxes ticked. Surely that ought not to be there.
I think it's a standard return, but given that there's no risks ticked, I think we'd be quite happy with that.
Okay, to a point, but it just feels a bit odd.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Matt Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite glad actually that this has come back to us, because what it's done is split out the two revenue streams that perhaps were slightly hidden before. And this is quite timely given a Scrutiny 3 meeting we had on Monday. So if I'm understanding this, £100,000 give or take came through presumably birthing fees, or mooring fees, if that's what you call them. And this authority then subsidised by a further 159,000 last year. Is that correct? So that's my first question. Second one's probably, and it'll be my bad for not picking these up first time. There's a significant drop in income between the 2 years, and I'd like to understand why that is. And the other observation is that we start with 0 and end with 0. So is this a separate entity or is it not? Because if it is a separate entity, then it's not carrying any reserves, which gives me concern about its robustness and viability. So could we just have could you just answer those, please?
In terms of the income, yes, the 99 or the £100,000 is the birthing fees. The balance at 159 includes the depreciation of the asset that you'll see on the return, recharges from the council, and also a small overspend for the year. Sorry, what the other questions? Can you repeat them, please? Sorry.
Yeah, essentially that there's no balances carried forward. Now these are returns similar. I'm not going to talk about Bracklow Community Council again, but I'll talk about Coity Hire, for example. They're very similar returns, and you would expect to see balances carried over, you know, for the robustness or the viability of the entity, but we don't see that here. So I'm just wondering why that is.
Yeah, that'll be, as you've picked up, our income is shown there separately, the actual income from birthing fees. The return is then balances back to zero with the contributions to cover the depreciation and the other costs I just mentioned.
Yep, sorry if I can, Chair. My point being, is this a separate entity or is it not? Because if this is a separate entity that we, you know, that just comes under our auspices, or if it is a true separate entity, we do expect it to carry reserves to ensure it's robust, as a community council would. But if this report is, or this return is to be a true reflection of what's going on, it carries no reserves at all. It starts the year with zero and ends with zero, and that doesn't seem credible to me. So unless there's something else going on, so I just need an explanation of that, please.
Can I come in, Chair?
Sorry, Anthony, carry on.
Yeah, I think what you're looking at there, Councillor Williams, is actually the income and expenditure for account during the year. So what it's actually saying is the money they've received from birthing fees and contributions from the authority equals the expenditure in the year. Okay, so there's nothing to be carried forward in terms of any surplus or deficit in terms of budget. I think if you look at the balance sheet, and again, the way these annual returns are set up, they're not very clear, and it's a valid point you raise. But in terms of the financial sustainability of Porthcawl, you've got nearly £3 million worth of fixed assets sitting there on the balance sheet. So, you know, I mean, not that they would, but they could sell those tomorrow and potentially recover that amount. So I don't think the way the annual return is set up is very helpful. And I think it should show a reserve position at the bottom of that, the balance sheet effectively, which would be the other side of the financial assets, the fixed assets. So it's okay, but it's not very well presented, and it's something that we need to sort of take back and think about in terms of how these things are presented.
So sorry, could I just come back again? So are we saying there are reserves, cash reserves, or are there no cash reserves? Because we've got in the balance sheet, you've got the 2.8 million. I have to flick between. We have to, and presumably the difference is the depreciation. So let me scroll down. 2.829744 million in assets, and that's fixed assets and long-term assets. Cash is zero. So are we saying that this carries no reserves, only fixed assets? I'm confused.
I think what it's saying is it's effectively showing in the statement of balances, what you have is the top half of a balance sheet. Okay, so in Bridgend, for example, you'd have the top half, which would show your debtors, your creditors, your fixed assets, and then the bottom half, they would be then supported by reserves. So I think there's a little bit missing from this table, and it's a standard table. It's used across Wales. And what I'm saying is the fixed assets and any debtors, I'm appreciating there's no debtors in there for this year, is a proxy for the reserve position. So if the test of a reserve, I think, Councillor, is that if you wound up that it's not company, the Porthcawl Harbour today, it would need to discharge all its debts, sell off its fixed assets or any assets that it had, and would it have anything left in the bank? And that's the position you have in Porthcawl. So if they wound up today, effectively, if they sold their fixed assets for 2,829,000, that's what they'd have effectively in the bank, and that would effectively be their reserve statement. So
sorry, could I come back? Sorry, could I come back one more time? I don't think this statement of accounts is correct. Because you've just said that there are missing things there. Is this actually properly solvent? Because if for whatever reason the door, the gate to the harbour got locked and or blocked for whatever reason, and people couldn't come in and they couldn't generate the revenue for berthing fees, what would they rely on to pay the bills? Because there's no reserve there, or is there a reserve? And if it's not written down, then it doesn't exist, does it? I'm struggling here. I'm going back to my pedantry again, I'm afraid. But how can we approve these if by your own admission that they're not correct and there's things not displayed on there as they should be?
I think we've got to be careful with the language, Councillor. We're not saying it's not correct. What I'm saying is there could be, there might be something, but it doesn't change the figures as such. It would just be a presentational issue. So, and I think you probably should have a reserve position, which would be the other side of that fixed asset position, sat in row. Is it row 12? I'm looking at. So I'm not saying for 1 minute it's wrong. I'm saying that it could be disclosed better and differently. Does that make sense? But if it helps, Chair, we can relook at this, because I wouldn't want you signing off anything that you weren't comfortable with.
I can understand Councillor Williams's concern is that it doesn't show, and I understand what you're saying in regard to fixed assets and long-term assets, that there is no cash reserve there. So if the cash reserve is tied up in the 2,829,000, if there is a reserve of money floating around, then maybe that needs to be split out, or as is what being said, there is no cash reserve anywhere. This runs on a year-by-year basis with no reserves whatsoever. Deb?
Sorry, if I can just add a little bit. No, there isn't. This is currently being subsidised slightly by the council, not by the whole 159,000 that's in that cell 2, because obviously that's a contribution towards, that's the depreciation, etc., as Nigel mentioned. But there is no cash surplus at the end of the year for this. Members may be aware that there is actually a proposal, I think, in the MTFS for full cost recovery on the harbour. So obviously that demonstrates that it isn't operating at a surplus at the moment. So hence why there is no cash reserve on this item.
Martin, does that explain the position? I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There is no cash reserves. It's being run basically on a year-by-year basis, isn't it? In some respects, with the council subsidising it. And the only, I need to be corrected here, but the only money it's got is in its asset. So presumably it's buildings, and the harbour itself is worth whatever it is. And if, picking up Anthony's point, if the wheel came off and you realised all the buildings and everything, then you'd end up with 2,829,000 or thereabouts. Is that sort of the position? Yeah. And in reality, these accounts do reflect the position. I think that's the position, Councillor, like it or not. There is no cash reserves in this organisation. It's subsidised by the authority. It has got obviously some fixed assets and long-term assets, but it hasn't got a running float in reality, if you know what I mean. So the accounts clearly are right, but the points you raised are very relevant. Am I correct there?
I don't know what you're asking there, Chair. I mean, I've made my point. Other hands are up. I'm sure people want to come back. Yeah.
Is that right, Deb?
Yes, I mean, if we had a cash reserve that we were carrying forward at the end of the year, that would be in line 7. There isn't, because the council is actually having to meet the deficit each year at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anthony, is it a legacy hand or?
It's apologies, Chair. It must be a legacy hand.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Councillor Griffiths.
So I'm not going to be able to move on, unfortunately, Chair. I did actually raise these the first time these accounts came through, and I think the wording of this is very unfortunate. In fact, I'll read it out. The sum of all current and deposit bank accounts, cash holdings and investments held the 31st of March. Now, does the Porthcawl Harbour Authority have a bank account? Well, it must have, because there's money going in and money going out. Is the balance of that bank account zero at the end of the financial year, exactly on that day? And the answer must be no, because there's no way we can have exactly zero bank account at the end of the year. So I think what's confusing everybody here is we've got a statement which says this is the sum of all deposit bank accounts. Now, forget about movements of money and whether it's anywhere else. There's a statement there that says it's the sum of all the current and deposit bank accounts, cash holders and investments held at 31st of March. And what we're saying is that's zero. And that doesn't appeal to anybody as common sense, because we know it's got a bank account and we know that the balance is not going to be zero. So I think that's what's confusing the hell out of all of us, to be frank. It confused the hell out of me in the summer. I didn't really understand the response I got at that point. It's come back now, and Councillor Williams has raised the same point as myself. So we as councillors clearly don't understand the terms in here, and that makes it very difficult for us to sign it off, because we don't understand it. And I think even after all of these explanations, and I'm looking around with nodding heads, we still don't understand it, and that makes it really hard for us to sign it off.
Can Deb come back? She's poised.
Sorry. No, we don't have a separate bank account. This goes through the council's bank account. So obviously there's no specific cash amount at the end of the year. We don't have a requirement to actually keep it as a separate bank account and operate it separately. So that's why it's difficult, because we cannot amend this certificate. We have to complete it as best we can, and it isn't the easiest certificate to complete. It's not very meaningful, really, in terms of what you're used to for the statement of accounts, for example. But no, all the income and expenditure goes through the council's main bank account.
Okay, if I could just have a comment on that, then. That feels uncomfortable for a separate entity which is doing its own accounts. That makes it makes this an accounting company, if you like. It's only there for accounting purposes. It's not. It doesn't hold its own bank account, and I think that's what's confusing the hell out of all of us. So now I understand. I didn't understand that before. Thank you, Deborah, but that makes me feel uncomfortable in an entirely different way.
Councillor Bledsoe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what more I can add other than expressing or reaffirming the concerns that Councillor Williams and Griffiths have just raised. I mean, Councillor Williams asked the question, if there's no cash, and we've been told that the thing that underpins it is the assets. But as Councillor Williams said, if something goes wrong on the day, who pays for it? I think the answer that we're getting is we pay for it, and it goes in what we subsidise.
Yeah.
But that then is that an arm, and I'm sharing quite a lot of uneasiness around this in signing this off on the basis of what I've heard today. I'm learning lots of things here. I mean, I raised this in scrutiny 3 the other day, that this entity should have been self-funding and self-financing for years. We should not have been subsidising this when we're making cuts to other areas. But now this is another different level of the fact that we are, if the situation that Councillor Williams arose and something goes wrong, we pay for it, is the answer.
Apparently,
and I'm really
yes.
uncomfortable in this agenda item now.
Yeah, apparently, yes. Deb.
Sorry, it took me a while to find it, but I've just found a letter going. I've been around long enough now. I found a letter going back to 2014, which was from the Wales Audit Office at the time, and it's all to do with the Harbours Act 1964, which sets out that we have to. It doesn't say that we have to keep it as a separate entity. What it says is that we have to required to prepare a separate annual statement of accounts relating to harbour activities, and that is why we complete this return every year. It doesn't say we have to hold it as a whole separate business or anything like that. It's all to do with reporting in the Harbours Act. So that's why.
I understand the concern of members about this clearly. The issue for me is this reflects the actual position with the knowledge of what the council has to do. Maybe there needs to be, it's a historic thing, isn't it? You keep producing it time and time and time again, and there's no background to it. And I think councillors today have learned well, I've learned quite a lot in regards to what this is all about. I think the reality for me is there needs to be some explanation around it. It's a joint committee. Allegedly, what it says is minor joint committees, but it's not a joint committee, is it? It's actually something different, I assume, in the structure of things. And there's a separate accounting mechanism by which you have to deal with it under the harbours legislation. I think for me, and again, it's a matter for committee, I think it does reflect the position of the Harbours Authority with all its warts and all at the moment. But I think there does need to be at some stage an explanation, Deb, rather than bringing it year in, year out and the similar questions being posed, is to set the scene, set out what needs to be done, set out how the authority actually deals with its budget, how we fund it and that. And again, as you said, it's a decision for council ultimately, Do you actually keep the harbour? I'm not sure. I don't know. It's a question to pose. I'd say, do you actually want it, or can you keep it, or have you got to keep it? Do you know what I mean? Because it's a burden, isn't it? If you're funding it, it's a burden, and do you want to continue to pay that burden? So, in return for me for the annual returns, the annual return is right. It states a set of facts, but there's more devil in the detail that's at the back of it.
If I could, Chair, yeah, maybe going forward in terms of the cover report, we can provide a little bit more detail, which will help committee to understand. But also just to note that the actual harbour income and expenditure is also within the council statement of accounts. This is just basically a snapshot of it as an addendum, really. So it is part of the overall council's accounts, but this is just a snapshot as required by that particular act. But yeah, we can include more information in terms of why we're doing this and why it's a separate. But yeah, the only way we can do it is via this certificate, which, as we've said, is not probably the most user-friendly to understand.
Yeah, and we're in a catch-22, aren't we? Because we either sign it off, but what do you put in its place? Because you've got to fill in the statutory return. And I think that's the difficulty we're in, warts and all, and maybe it is something that needs to be discussed. I don't know whether, is it a statutory term from Wales Audit or whatever, maybe it's something an Anthony could go away with and discuss with his colleagues as to actually, how this could be framed in a more customer friendly and, member of the public could understand it, because clearly if councillors can't understand it, how's a member of the public going to understand it?
Can I just respond to that, Chair?
Sorry, Anthony.
I think it's a good point, and I don't know the provenance of it, because it's the same return we use for like small community councils as well. So there is a fair question to see, well, where's that come from? What's the basis of this return? I know the principle of it is that what we don't want to be doing is full-scale audits on relatively small bodies. So trying to alleviate some of the bureaucracy, administration, and cost around preparing separate accounts and then having them audited. I think the backdrop is to try and make it a little bit more proportional and sensible. Sometimes when you do that, you lose context. So I think that's the position we're potentially in here. But I will go back, Chair, and try and understand what the backdrop is in terms of that report, that annual statement. Where does it come from? What is the where is it fed from? What sort of framework has it come from? And I'll respond to you on that front.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's a sort of feeling in the room that, and I think you've touched on it as well, that this does need to be looked at again, and it's either a separate entity or it's not. And if it's not, is this the appropriate way of reporting in line with our obligations under the Harbours Act? One question I do have, though, is presumably if it doesn't hold its own reserves, then we hold reserves on its behalf. And what I would like is it can't be said now because I'm sure it's not available, but what I would like is a note to the committee after this meeting to tell us how much reserve we are holding in relation to Porthcawl Harbour.
I think what they're saying is there isn't any, because you're
So
subsidising
if
it.
if that's the case, then it's purely out of our general reserve, one would imagine.
Deb, do you want that, someone from finance answer rather me?
Yes, it's treated no differently in that sense than any other service within the council. This falls within the community's budget, so it would contribute towards any net over or underspend that is reported as part of the quarterly monitoring reports. So yes, it's part of the council's overall budget and expenditure.
So this will have been picked up somewhere as being subsidised in another committee in another place. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. There isn't any reserves. Actually, the council is.
It does answer, but of course, if it was held, within itself, if that makes sense, we would have an idea of the quantum. Do we have any idea of what the appropriate level of reserve for this operation is, or is it just in the mix? And I think that's an interesting question for another day.
I think the issue is surely is there isn't any reserve and it's costing the authority money. And I should imagine from the statement of accounts for last year and the year before that and the year before that, if someone's got the time to work their way through it, you will find out whether or not it's ever made a profit. And I don't know. No, it's never made a profit. So you've been subsidising it year in, year out. And again, I think that's another discussion for another place in reality. Do you want a Porthcawl Harbour or don't you? But the issue you've always got, I should imagine, under the Harbours Act, is whether you've got a statutory obligation to maintain it. That's the issue. Whether you like it or not is whether or not Bridgend County Borough Council, because it's on the coast, have got a statutory responsibility. I'm glad when I was up in Merthyr, we haven't got a coastline, because otherwise it caused me a big problem. But that's the reality. Sorry, Caris.
Can I suggest that maybe, I think Councillor Williams did mention this, maybe we do a note for you about the harbour, about the way we financially account for it, but also from a service perspective as well, and circulate that to committee members.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. Thank you, Caris. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, I just want to say a big light went on in my head and I completely understand now. I understand the report and I understand the circumstance. Basically, this is just an extract of our full accounts. It just says relevant transactions from the full accounts because we have to do that for the Harbour Authority Act. And the reason why I think a lot of us are confused is because those of us who are community or town councillors fill in this form for our own community, and those are entirely separate entities, self-standing and have their own reserves and everything else. So we're using the same form to do two entirely different processes, and I think that's confused the hell out of all of us. Now that I understand that this is just an extract of our accounts and that the fixed assets here are actually our assets as a borough council, there's no entity out there called the harbour that actually owns those entities. They're actually our assets, and therefore we just balance the books every year, and that's why it's a zero statement. So I do understand now. I think there's a separate question as part of the budget process about whether that's appeared appropriately in the reports that we've seen about budget and projected costs, and whether we have a future with that. But I just wanted to clarify, I was very confused earlier, but now I do fully understand, and so I would actually be happy to sign these off as they are.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. And for me, there's two issues here, and I want to deal with what we are able to deal with. We've discussed the merits or the fact that we may be subsidising something within our borough that is providing a service for those who are fortunate enough to own boats. That's a policy decision, and in relation to that, perhaps we could forward that to maybe the COSC meeting that's due to meet next week to discuss the budget. That's for them to decide. But perhaps I know the chair of COSC is here, and perhaps they could look into that side of that.
He's nodding like mad. Oh, and he's got a thumbs up as well.
But in relation to the document that's in front of us, and I know that Councillor Griffiths has just said he would be happy. I'm still a little bit uncomfortable on the basis of what I've heard, on the fact that a line that you used that I picked up on and I was going to say anyway, was that this has to be viewed by the public as being an open and transparent document. I'm not happy to sign off that document on the basis of how it's presented. It may be factually true under the terms that we have to adhere to under numerous acts, but if a member of the public was to read that and we've signed it, I don't think it can be taken on the merits of what it currently says. I think if we're going to sign it off, it needs a lot more context and detail around why it is how it is, because we've sat here for 20 minutes and we've struggled and we're meant to know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think it's the narrative you need. I think there is a view they have to be signed off. Okay, you're not going to change that, are you, in reality, because that's the document you've got to sign off. It's an extract from the overall account. So the document in reality is factual. It's the narrative which will need to come with it. And I think if the officers can work on that, if using the Harbours Act and other bits and pieces, explaining to the public, if it has to be explained about, I don't think many people take any interest in it, but if it has to be explained, use the explanation for it. Because I agree with you, it completely confused most of us in this room. I understand where Councillor Williams come from, in reality, but it's clear to me that it's always been subsidised, and again that can be picked up in the notes, over recent years. Obviously, Councillor Alex Williams is going to be looking at it as part of the budget process. I don't know whether there is an option to sell it. I've got no idea, Caris, as part of the ongoing. Whether it's an asset to be sold and whether it's got any value. I've got no idea. I've got no idea whether he can do it under the legislation. So I think that there's a key point there. But I think obviously we're in a position whereby I think we're being told by the officers they're factual, it required to be signed off, but there's a little bit of work to be done behind the scene for members to understand the exact position. Councillor Williams.
Chair, I was just going to, in the interest of moving this on, there is the option of putting additional disclosure notes on this form. It's actually at the top of page 243. Could I propose that we do that we ask officers to put notes in there that explain in as best they can in 50 words or whatever's allowed to explain these reports and give that context? And then I would be happy to sign these off on that basis. I'm not without those notes. So whether we could ask them to do that and on the proviso that that's going to come, then I would be happy to sign these off then, Chair.
Yeah, I've got nods from the officers. I think that's a very good suggestion.
I think the only thing I would ask is, as far as Audit Wales is okay with us using those lines, if you like, in the form to do that, and then just a process thing, would we need to bring that back through Governance and Audit Committee again? Or are you saying if we put that in to make it clearer, on that assumption you would then approve?
Can I suggest, Caris, that committee give me delegated authority to sign those off to ensure that your wishes are put into those forms, because obviously you can hold me to account then at the next meeting or otherwise, and that the officers do what is necessary, because I fully understand now the discussion, and we just sign these off, because what we don't want is to wait till April's the next meeting, and hopefully you would have confidence that I would ensure that that is undertaken. Would you be happy with that, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, sure.
I'd be very happy. So sorry, Chair. Sorry. Yeah.
So I propose that as a motion, as a motion, then, Chair.
I second that. I'll second that, Chair.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So we can move on. Richard, did you?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, this is only for clarity. So if there was a major incident down in the harbour, right, where would the money come from to fix it? Is it coming out of the Communities Directorate? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is this budget is currently held within the Communities Directorate. How we fund an emergency in the council obviously will depend on the size or the cost. It could be that we have a reserve set aside for such eventualities. We may have to use the General Council Fund. We'd have to, each scenario is different, really.
Is that okay? I thought you were going to move your boat then, Richard, but maybe not. Okay. Well, are there any further questions? I think it's been done to death, really. Any comments? No. So we've got the recommendation that the Governance and Audit Committee, we approve the amended audited accounts for Porthcawl Harbour Return 2022-23, subject to narrative being inserted on this page 243, giving additional information as to the background and the statutory basis under which these accounts are prepared, and that delegated authority has been granted to me to sign them off on behalf of the committee.
I'll formally move that, Chair, with the recommendations of what you've just said.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. Have I got a seconder? Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Cusbert. So, anyone against? Nope. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is progress against the internal audit risk-based plan 23-24. Andrew, I know you've been waiting patiently.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Been here from the start. So I'm Andrew Wathen, Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. This is one of the regular reports we bring into committee. As the Chair says, this is progress against the agreed audit plan as at Q3, so as at the end of December 2023. Giving you an update of where we are in terms of the audit work we're progressing and the opinions which we've issued. So just a bit of background in terms of the quarterly targets we've set ourselves. They're outlined in paragraph 3.2. So Q3, we've estimated that we should be achieving 50% of the audit plan. And it's reassuring to note that within Bridgend, we're achieving 52%. So just slightly above target. And from the information provided in 3.3 table 1, it shows that we're in a good position to achieve the year-end target of 80%. We've issued final reports and draft reports, which make up the 52% of work completed. And there's work in progress, as in it's all underway for 15 additional reports, and further work will be allocated in the Q4. That'll then hopefully achieve the target set by year end, and we can provide the appropriate assurance that we need to give you the assurance that there's appropriate internal control environment, good governance and risk management processes in place across all services of the council. So of the 22 opinions reports we've issued, 3.4 sets out the opinions, substantial and reasonable amount to 19, and there are 3 limited assurance opinions, one of which has been reported into committee previously. The other 2 are noted in 3.6, along with the bullet points as to why we felt there was limited assurance we could provide given the work we undertook. What we've also done, picking up on points made by members previously, at 3.7 is include a progress status of any jobs carried forward from the previous year's plan, in terms of how we're getting on in terms of issuing final draft reports. So of the 12 that were carried forward from 22-23, we've managed to progress 75% of those. 1 job is in progress and 2 to be allocated in Q4. Appendix A shows the detail of the plan and the information provided above, but also identifies that we've issued or made 86 recommendations across the various audit jobs we've undertaken, 10 of a high priority, 43 of a medium priority, and a 33 low priority. In terms of making sure we complete as much of the audit plan as possible in the year, the team regularly review and check on the high and medium priority recommendations to make sure that they are being implemented. And I'll come on to that in the second report here this afternoon. So Appendix A is the detail of what I've just discussed, outlines the individual jobs of the audit plan and the status, along with the opinion issued and the number of recommendations issued per audit job. So, Chair, before I go on to invite members to questions, if I could just give members an update in terms of where we are with the Regional Internal Audit Partnership.
If you could, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. As members are probably aware, the partnership was set up in April 2019. and is 4 and a bit years old. It's due for a renewal in April 24. The term comes to an end. The original agreement was for 3 years plus 2 years, so that's been exhausted by April 24. So there's a call to have all partners to sign up to a new partnership moving forward. We've had positive feedback from the work we've undertaken and from Section 151 officers, and there's encouragement to continue with that. One thing to make members aware of is one of the partners, RCT, has actually indicated that they do not wish to continue with the partnership, and they want to take their internal audit service back in-house. There's no issues in terms of quality of service, and no issues in terms of relationships or anything like that. And what I can do is circulate the information that we've received from RCT to give some assurances to members that there are no concerns around this audit service being provided. They've quoted that as members of the regional service for the past 5 years, Council has seen excellent continuity of its internal audit services, underpinned by the continuation of the sound arrangements in terms of audit planning, delivery, maintaining quality of service, support our governance and audit committee arrangements. This has benefited from the introduction of consistent working arrangements. We're grateful to our regional partners for the valued and collaborative approach we shared and enjoyed over the last 5 years. So they feel that they want to take it in a different strategic direction. But that said, we are having discussions with other local authority internal audit teams who are interested in joining the partnership, and a cabinet report will be taken in due course, outlining the details of that. I just felt it was important for members to be aware of that situation, Chair, and before we move into 24-25 audit planning arrangements. Happy to take any questions on the progress versus the plan, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. Obviously, I'm sure members just want the reassurance that normal service will continue to be resumed, so it won't have any huge impact upon the regional service, even though we've only have 3 members. But it's also interesting to note that there are a couple of other local authorities who are interested in joining the service, because again, if we were delivering this ourselves, I should imagine, and very good that RCT can take it back in-house, is that you'd be looking to invest a lot more money in it, because again, small numbers, and I think Councillor Griffiths raised it in regards to finance teams. Unfortunately, some of the other services get cut before that, so I'm pleased that normal service will be continued. Bayadin.
Thank you. Yeah, my observation is on the appendix B, where recommendations that were made and that are overdue are yet to be implemented. And I think that some time ago we've actually spoken to the need for some of these recommendations to be taken much more seriously, if I may use that word. But I think that while I see that these are not necessarily council deliverables, but I'm a bit concerned that some of the reasons actually for the delay are not very comforting, that audit items are left unattended to, and we're having overdue audit items sticking out. And what exactly are we going to do? Is there any sort of sanctions or things we can do to make sure that this can be addressed? Thank you.
Thanks, Biden. Any other questions? Karis, are you okay?
I wasn't going to raise a question as such. I was just going to come in on the issue about the internal audit service, I suppose, just to reassure members that we are due to re-sign up for this joint agreement because the current agreement ends at the end of this financial year, and we will be taking a report through Cabinet on that. I suppose just to reassure that we've never had any issues with regards to the audit service. In fact, it works very well for us, and therefore, disappointed that a member of the partnership has decided to remove themselves from it, but that from Bridget's point of view, our intention would be to be recommending to Cabinet that we actually continue in this joint agreement going forward.
Give that, Caris. Councillor Colin Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I'm guessing that RCT, Andrew Wathen, directed to Andrew Wathen, I'm guessing that RCT want to pull out at the end of this financial year then, yeah? Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. The partnership ends at 31st of March. So for the 24-25 audit programme, they intend to take that back in-house.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew Bagley, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to thank Andrew for the update of the report, the direction of travel. I'd agree with Caris in terms of direction. Just a quick question, Andrew. On paragraph 3.6, you refer to the security and access to council buildings. I think it's appropriate with, we do reflect on that because that has got a limited report. I note from the paper that follows there were 6 agreed actions in response to the findings, one of which was high priority. I think when you read the bullet points, it is a little bit concerning, and it's probably right there is a high priority action, but I just wondered if you could give us an update in terms of what that action was and when it's due to be completed, please.
Right, I think, Chair, we're kind of crossing over reports here. The detail of that will be in my other report, the second report that's coming to you in terms of the implementation of recommendations. So if I could pick that up, that point up there, Andrew, I'll do that. And also that picks up Bayadin's point as well in the next report. Is
that okay, Andrew?
Yeah, that's fine. I only picked up as part of this report because obviously refers to the
okay.
issues that were brought out. Thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions shown. Any comments? No? Okay, go to the recommendation that we note the contents of the report and the progress being made against the 23-24 internal audit risk-based plan. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Grammer. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Flett. So anyone against? No. Thank you. Next report is the internal audit recommendation monitoring report. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to respond to the questions from members present in this report. So this is the implementation of the recommendations that we've made of final reports issued, and it's really encouraging and assuring that the service managers are agreeing the recommendations that we make following the audits that we undertake. But the trick is to make sure that those recommendations are actually implemented. So we agree a implementation date with the service manager, and then the audit team regularly check to make sure that that has actually been implemented. We get reassurance from the service managers in terms of progress of how they're implementing the recommendations, and from time to time they do become outstanding, which I'll come to in a moment. Some dates are also revised, and we work with the service managers to try and get them achieved and implemented as soon as we possibly can. So 2.3 identifies the priority in terms of how we define recommendations within each audit report as either high, medium, or low. As mentioned previously, the audit team then would review and check on the implementation of the high and medium priority recommendations made. The low priorities are the responsibility of the manager to implement, and we would check that if we did a follow-up review of a limited opinion audit. So if I can move members to paragraph 3.2 and table 2, that shows the recommendation status for completed audits for 23-24. So we've issued 53 recommendations, a number of high, number of medium have been implemented. Quite a few have got a future target date, which is understandable given the time when the report was actually finalised. But to note, and picking up Andrew's point, there are 6 recommendations that have gone past their implementation date and are now considered to be outstanding. And I'll pick those up in a bit more detail a bit further on in the report. So also for recommendations made pre-23-24 that previously outstanding, that's shown in table 23, table 3. And it's reassuring to know that they are either have been implemented or they do have a future target date and then are outstanding. So in terms of the recommendations made as a summary, that's shown at Appendix A, split over the financial years 21-22, 22-23 and 23-24. And we've highlighted the high, medium recs that have been made, implemented and are outstanding. Moving on then to the reasons behind that, we've got an Appendix B then, which gives a bit more detail to members about the issue we identified as a recommendation and the agreed action and whether it's been addressed or not. So I don't intend to go through these in any detail, Chair, but we'll welcome any questions on this. There are some revised dates being input, such as the primary school, because the head teachers got back to us and there are certain circumstances there within the school which pushes that back a little bit. And these are, as I say, being continually followed up by the audit team. What I would say to members is Appendix C, we've noted cybersecurity. The main issue there was a lot of the issues would have been addressed if we'd managed to appoint a Chief Information Security Officer into the organisation, but unfortunately that's not happened. So in discussions with Caris, we've now revised the action agreed to address the recommendation, and hence a revised implementation date has been included in the action plan. So picking up the questions then from Andrew, sorry, Chair. Picking up the question from Biden first, the reasons for the delay come from the service managers, and we make sure that the CMB is made aware of these so that they can inform the service managers of the importance of implementing the recommendations which have been agreed at the time the audit was undertaken. If there are consecutive limited opinions, or if there's significant delays in implementing the recommendations, obviously I'm bringing it to your attention as Governance and Audit Committee. It's taken to CMB for them to address, but the option could be to call some service managers into committee and ask them to be accountable as to why they haven't addressed those particular issues. That's a call, Chair, that you and your members would need to make based on the information in the report. I do apologise, Andrew. I've assumed the comment that you made was in the second report, but it is actually in the first report. So I do apologise for that. I'm sorry, members, for the confusion. I'll open up to questions and come back to Andrew's questions later, if that's okay, Chair, so as not to confuse the report at the moment.
Thanks, Andrew. Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Andrew, in respect of Appendix B and C, actually, regarding Abercerdyn Primary School and Tinnereal Primary School, and the issue of the private fund, which is quite concerning. Have you come across any other school with a private fund that's being used at the moment?
Most schools do have a private fund, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it would be the school fund. It's called a number of variety of names, but where they kind of have fundraisers, where they have fetes, where they to sponsorship kind of money, the money goes into that, and it's then used for the benefit of the pupils at that individual school. So if they did like a sponsored walk or something like that,
Yeah.
the money would go into that school fund as opposed to going to the school budget. But the majority of schools do have a school fund.
Right. So do they have any guidance around it? Is it accepted practice? Is it good practice, etc.?
Yeah, there should be some good practice guidance around it.
And that's available to all schools then, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, good.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Hang on a minute, Deb.
Just to say that the finance section within the council provides guidance on school private funds, and all schools have got access to that information, and we update it as required. And obviously they can come to us if they've got any questions on it as well.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks.
Andrew Bagley, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to raise a concern or seek assurances, really, on page 264, we raised the point about staff driving licences being reviewed, and I think we did have a high priority action which was due in for September. I suppose we're 4 months overdue now, and it says assurance is still being sought. So if we have a concern, we've agreed high priority actions about staff driving licences, in particular of school vehicles. I think I refer to the Corporate Manslaughter Act, etc. Some of these repercussions you can imagine the Daily Mail headlines. I suppose I'm just looking for some comfort this is actually in hand. Or do we need to do something more urgent? Thank you.
Yeah, before Andrew comes in and before you come in, Councillor Bledsoe, I've got a proposal here in regards to all these issues. People need to be accountable and responsible for delivering the services, whether it's in a school or whether it's in this authority. And clearly, when there's an internal audit report raising issues, then they need to be addressed as soon as possible. If you look at the document itself, and I know we've raised this before, but page 266, you've got the iTrent system. The recommendation initially was agreed on December 2021. Now, it's been revised to 22, 23, 23, 23, 24, and there's no resolution to it, just floats on. And picking up points, I think, that Councillor Martin Williams raised and Councillor Griffiths raised, what's the risk there in regards to that matter? And again, we've got other issues which have been revised time and time again. And in my opinion, it's not my decision, it's the committee's decision. In my opinion, it's just not good enough. And the proposal I was going to make before members come in is that in regards to the iTrent system, that the systems manager and the relevant director appear before this committee in April, unless this matter is addressed. But even if it is addressed, they need to appear before this committee because they need to take some accountability and responsibility. In regards to the other issues, in regards to the schools, and Andrew, the point you make in regards to the driving licenses, again, which is in another school, and I know Councillor Davis raised it again in regards previously in regards to the risk this puts schools at. I was going to ask Andrew whether he would write to the schools, the head teacher and the governing body, and advise them if this isn't addressed by the next committee, then they'll be appearing before this committee to be accountable for what they should actually be doing. In regards to all the other issues, and again, Andrew raises the issue about writing to the corporate management team. I've asked him, subject to you agreeing, that he write to the corporate management team and actually say now people need to take responsibility and accountability for these matters. We're not prepared to let them slip and slip and slip. And we want an update on each of them at the next committee, save for cyber, because obviously Caris had that, I think last time, was it you, Caris? And was told that she may have to appear before this committee. And obviously there's a set of key dates. But with the rest of them, people need to take responsibility for it, and they're not. These are just getting fudged and pushed off, and and some of the issues quite clearly Andrew's raised about corporate manslaughter. If something went wrong and they come back to this authority and they said, well, you knew about this and you've done nothing about it, oh, we're not having that anymore. Okay, subject the committee agreeing, I am saying we are not having it anymore. If you don't want to vote with me, that's a matter for you, but I want my vote recorded to say this is what I think needs doing, because people need to actually be accountable. So on that point, iTrent system, we have the director, may not be you, Caris, I'm told, it may be someone else, and the systems manager as to why that, because there's an agreement in place there, which hasn't been signed. In regards to the schools, they be put on notice that they need to address it, and we want an update. And if it's not addressed by the next committee, which is April, they will be appearing, the head teacher and the chair of governors. And on the rest, the management team are told that we need an update by April, and we want most of these to come off. No, exactly.
Chair, we can't hear what's going on in the chamber, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I was just coming in to say what Andrew has just said. Sorry, Simon. This is a serious issue here, right? If you've got drivers that haven't got licenses, are not covered, and are taking children out in a bus, right, that is a serious issue. VOSA will get involved, right? There are repercussions all over the place here. And I think, Chair, we should sort this out today. Okay. And sort it out now with a letter to the director to say he needs to either sort it out today, or we have a special meeting and he comes in front of us as a matter of urgency.
Richard, I'm for you there, and I think it's not, whether it's the director, because I understand CCYD is a school or a college or whatever, is that the chair of governors, or is it the director of the school, or I don't know what it is, what structure is it? But the chair of governors and the head teacher appear before us next time. So that's iTrent and school vehicles CCYD appear before us next time. And well, there's very little we can do apart from that, but I agree with the letter going. No, I agree with the letter going, Richard, completely, to say it needs to be addressed. Hopefully it will be addressed within the next week or so. With a feedback to the director, but I think we need to see them as well to express our concern.
Chair, can I propose something then, right? That we have a special meeting of Audit Committee to deal with all these issues in one go. They all come in front of us and we deal with it.
Okay. Okay. So where are we now? We're January, end of February?
As urgent as we need it, Chair, because if these children are out and they're not...
no, exactly.
It's crazy. I want it minuted, Chair, that I'm not taking responsibility. We raised it here, and if anything does happen, I don't want it coming back on me.
Okay, no, I understand.
We can't really hear Councillor Granville from here, Chair.
Sorry, Alex. What I just said was I wanted it minuted that I've said what I've said, because I don't want any parents individually suing us. As a corporate body, they could name us individually as an audit committee for not doing our work. So I wanted on the record that I have suggested that we have an urgent meeting as urgently as possible to deal with all these things in red, which the chair has just mentioned, as a special meeting, Alex, to deal with them. And get
I formally second your recommendation.
Oh, look, there we are. Right, okay. So what I was suggesting, Alex, sort of, we're at the end of January now. We give them a week or two, but if Democratic Services can find a date, middle of February, to call in, certainly in regards to the school driving licenses, but in regards to the rest, we just need an urgent update, Caris, from the management team and the directors, and the iTrent needs to be resolved. Well, they need to come in. They need to come in on that meeting as well. You happy with that?
I'll take that back, Chair, and yes, we'll get the necessary.
Yeah, you see the flavour of the meeting. There are lots of questions here, but I'm just wondering whether that stops all the questions, because in reality, I think we're doing what we should be doing in bringing these people in. Councillor Betzel, you were first.
Yeah, all I wanted to say, Chair, is two things really. One, I think in my entire time of being a councillor in this and at community council level, I don't think I've ever agreed with anyone more than what you said in your opening statement. And two, Councillor Granville offered me apology for jumping in. You don't need to, because your passion matched the level of the seriousness here.
Yeah,
there's no apology needed, Councillor Granville. What you said is absolutely spot on. I totally support I remember the meeting where you raised this, Chair. You picked it up and you brought this to the council's attention, and we were flabbergasted. The fact it's still ongoing is just
Not
beyond.
good enough.
And it's not just this item on this committee. This is going on across the council. On scrutiny 3, we have points of action that go back a year, and we're not getting answers back. Not as important as the issue that we've raised here. And I absolutely, if it's possible to third something, that we have an EGM to bring something in, because we are absolutely right here. We have potentially people driving vehicles around the borough, and I use the word potentially, driving vehicles around the borough with children in, and we can't prove they have a driver's license.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything more serious that I've ever encountered as a councillor.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Can I just add, you're not the only council, okay, that are outstanding. But if you are, and I'm not saying I'm the big guru here, but if you in any of the councils which I chair, people have come in before the committees now who have never come before committees before. And it's amazing the reaction we actually get and the action we get, because people don't like appearing before the Governance and Audit Committee. But there we are. Sorry, Councillor Griffiths.
I was on the same theme, actually. It's around the cybersecurity one. It looks like there's some long grass that's being pushed into, because there's obviously a decision now. We're not going to get a CISO to take on responsibility for this. And it talks about that person being not appointed, so a revised action agreed and will be considered as part of the new digital strategy. That's just, actually, they're not going to do anything, as far as I can tell, and given the state of everything else. So I think that whole section around cybersecurity now needs to be refreshed and needs to come back to us. I don't think it's quite as urgent as the driving license, but potentially the impact is even greater. If we do have a cyber problem, it could bring the entire council down indefinitely. So the impact of not getting this right is absolutely huge, and I don't think we can afford to push it actually down the road. I know we haven't got any money, but I tell you what, if we get ransomware, nobody will have any money. So I think that this isn't something that we can wait upon a future decision, that we need to push to get this actually sorted out very much more quickly.
Caris.
I just want to reassure you that work is being done about cybersecurity, and we are trying to mitigate those risks as much as possible. In fact, we came in and did a presentation to Governance and Audit in the last 12 months on that. Many of the timelines within the revised plan are actually April this year. So I would suggest that we should have an update for you when Andrew brings his next report to you in April, assuming this report comes in April. We'll update our actions and our responses for that meeting.
So if I may have a follow-up, I wasn't quite clear whether that agreed date was for you to come back with a plan or whether it's to do something. You know, it's a bit unclear about what the impact of the CISO not being appointed actually is on that. And when it says agreed there, I'm not quite sure what the agreed means either. Does that mean that we, the committee, has agreed it? I'm not sure.
No.
I mean, Andrew might be better placed to ask this, but I'm reading that it's agreed as that we will have completed and done that action for that date.
Yeah, sure. The agreed date is agreed by the service manager, and any dates included are dates of implementation of the action agreed.
Can we have a look at the wording there, because I find that very difficult to understand with the note around CSO. I don't really understand what's being done in each of those points now. Okay,
I'll take it back with Caris and have a conversation with Caris about the action plan for that particular review. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Chair.
I think the other thing is, Simon, in regards to that, it can come back as a specific item if it needs to in April. So Caris can and a team can update us on regards to those specific items. Andrew Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the driving licensing issue. I agree with everything that's been said, but on this specific issue, what I don't want to happen is we come back together in 2 weeks' time and have another meeting on this and talk about what assurances could be put in place. The license check only takes literally 3 minutes once we've got the driver's code, etc. I do think that a message needs to go out, something along the lines of, we either know they have a license or by the end of next week they stop driving. Thank you.
Yeah, as long as we've got power to do that through the education department, I think that's the issue. But I completely agree. You know, I think Councillor Granville suggests an urgent letter go out today or obviously we haven't got education here at the moment, but someone needs to send it if they're one of our maintained schools or we've got responsibility for it. That needs to go out today to say, look, you know, if you're not doing the checks by tomorrow or whenever, you know, within a couple of days, then you must suspend all driving at the moment because of the risk. And again, not only the risk of the driver, the insurance as well. You know, that's the other issue. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to remind you, Gareth, as we're involved in this discussion, but my original discussion with you was prompted because I was concerned. I don't want to scare people, but to heighten the debate, my concerns were not so much around driving licenses, although that's obviously an important part of it, and insurance, but actually the roadworthiness of vehicles used by schools, not this council. But I did have serious concern about an issue in another school in another council, whereby there were serious question marks over school minibuses. So you can't ignore the extent of the seriousness of this issue. Thanks.
Yeah. No, roadworthiness is again another issue. So completely agree. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, Chair. Firstly, apologies. I have to drop out after this contribution. I will endeavour to come back if you're still going. Secondly, yes, agree with everyone. This is a very serious matter. And if we need to do something urgently, then I completely support that. On a more general point about overdue actions, could we make it known that any action owner who has an overdue action at the time of any given audit committee should be expected to come in and account for themselves? I think rather than doing something by exception, the rest of it, I think if when the invites to go out to this committee, they should be extended to anyone who has an overdue action, and it can just be part and parcel of this agenda item. I think we have to just, you know, that becomes the expectation and the standard.
Yeah, I'd just take some advice from the officers on that in regards to, obviously we could have whole rafts of people turning up and they're not needed. I think
Chair, I think it should be the expectation that they might be asked to account for themselves, not necessarily that they will, but
put on standby maybe on the basis that we get the report, and if it's not being addressed by that time, they get a phone call to come in. Yeah, okay. Richard, sorry.
Chair, just to go on from what Colin has just said, I think perhaps as well we should send the same letter to licensing, because they're the department that gives the license for these buses, I take it, if they're not ours. So they must be coming somewhere to get a license. They have to have a license to carry the children, I take it.
No, I don't think they do some of these, so they're private vehicles.
So they're private vehicles then, are they?
They're not licensed as public service vehicles or anything like that, but we could just check with licensing.
Well, I would, because it could be a mixture here.
Yeah, no, I understand. Okay. Any other questions? No? Any comments? Yes.
I sincerely hope you'll indulge me this, Chair. Colin Davis, Councillor Davis, brought up the associations that link with schools to help keep money out. I'm running a half marathon for Friends of Heronsbridge on Saturday. All donations gratefully received. Thank you.
Very naughty, taking advantage. Richard, yours a legacy hand, is there? Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I have a previous engagement at 1:30. I'm going to have to leave.
I think the problem is the quality of the discussion and debate today has been quite amazing, really, and I don't normally like 3-hour meetings, but I think, you know, some of these matters have certainly hit an accord with people. So if you have to leave, then so be it.
Thank you, Chair.
That's no problem. Obviously, no comments. The recommendations then, in reality, is whilst we note the status of these matters in the appendices, the first thing is that an urgent letter be sent by education, if we can instruct education to do it, or Caris, it all down to you, a lot of this. Education send a letter in regards to the vehicle licensing, driving licensing. I think we ought to pick up roadworthiness and things like that in the document, and that you know, it is expected that they're likely to be, they'll have to come to committee just to explain why has it been outstanding so long, even if they'd addressed it at the meeting which Democratic Services will set up for us in February. Yeah. Yeah. I think the second one is that iTrent appear on the special meeting because of the been outstanding since 2021, and everyone else basically needs to give us an update at that meeting, specifically primarily to tell us they've addressed the issue. And if they haven't addressed the issue by that meeting, then Councillor Williams, they need to come along and explain why they haven't done it. So are we there or thereabouts? And Caris, your cyber April. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you.
I'll formally move with the amendments that we've made as opinions today, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a second there?
Second.
So anyone against? No. Steve, have you got that for your minute? I'm glad you have. Oh, good. Right. Okay. Apologies for you having to wait so long. So we're now on the disabled facility grants. So a very good report, good positive report. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of recording, name's Martin Morgans, Head of Partnerships for Gen Council. So I'll quickly take you through the report. So it's an update for the Governance and Audit Committee in terms of actions taken and progress to date. Reading the background, there's a lot of references to reports that span quite some time ago, so I'd just like to give you a brief overview of the history, if possible, and why these two reviews have driven the need for change within the Disabled Facilities Grant. The Wales Audit Office report outlined some key needs in terms of the DFG service, in terms of a strategic fit to the Wellbeing Future Generations Act, the need to strengthen the service as well, bring clarity to the process for the grants in terms of the citizens so they can understand the process, and look at formal systems for accrediting the contracts with builders to ensure safeguarding. The Regional Internal Service Audit Report 2019-20 gave limited assurance at the time, and some similar themes around there. Some of the key recommendations were around the processes needed to be reviewed to be as efficient as possible and documented in terms of procedure notes that are put in place so staff can understand the system and work within it, that the occupational therapists continue to work across the service, and also to ensure there was adequate staffing to process applications as at this time, and also a review of the agent provision, the model in terms of the DFG service at the time to be taken in account of our procurement guidelines. So when you look at the core recommendations across the two reports, both are focused on streamlining the service, taking away the ambiguity for the citizen in regards to the process, the management of the contractors, and putting effective controls for monitoring and compliance. These represented the key driver for a single delivery model where BCBC were looking to internalise their own processes end to end. Previously, we were the agent model, so we didn't have that end to end sort of autonomy over the DFGs from referral right through to concept and then delivery. So in terms of improving the service, the decision was taken to internalise this by Cabinet on the 19th of January 2021. So that gives you a background of where we are, and then obviously as an addendum, we've had multiple reports into Governance Audit Committee, CCMB, and COSC. So that in terms of the current situation, point 3 outlines the progress to date and some of the difficulties we've had in terms of recruitment and what mitigation we put in place for that. I've actually been operationally responsible for the service for the last 8 months due to illness of the Group Manager for Housing, so I've had a direct role in terms of pushing forward some of the sort of outlined findings within the report. But I would like to take you to 3.7 and 3.8. 3.7 focuses on the finance and outlines that we anticipate that we'll have full expenditure of the DFG capital alongside the additional grants. That is the top up on the Regional Partnership Board additional grant, which is a real positive position, and also 3.8 in terms of performance. We anticipate by the end of the year, in terms of our financial year, March 31st, 272 DFGs will be implemented, which is a 56% increase from the previous year. And this is the first time I've seen that level of productivity and that full capital expenditure over the previous years, which is a movement forward in terms of the DFG service. So I would like to take the committee to the recommendations to note the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Very positive report. Councillor Bledsoe?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to formally move the report and to thank Martin for all the work he does in this very important field. This is important money that gets to the most vulnerable in our society, and we must do everything we can to help its delivery. So thank you to Martin, and thank you to his team.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Colin Davis?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it is a positive picture in terms of the improvements made, but I have a few issues about the report, if I may. Just bear with me. So the report alludes to a number of other reports that were made in previous years, and there was one report, or bear with me again, to Cabinet on the 19th of January 2021, and it talks about the national strategic indicators, and the key indicator being the average number of calendar days taken to deliver a disabled facilities grant. Now, if you recall, Chair, when we last discussed this, we were looking at the league table. Now, league table is double-edged sword. You know, sometimes they are unfair in terms of they don't always measure, you know, the competing priorities, but it does focus the mind in terms of where we're at in comparison to other local authorities. And one of the impetus, one of the reasons for the focus on the service was our poor performance compared to other areas. Now, this report, although it does lay out exactly what it says it's going to do in terms of to update the governance and audit committee on actions taken to progress improvements, it does that. We can see the progress it's made, but what about the outcome? So this report, as I say, it alludes to other reports. There's a different format, those other reports. As I just said, it talks about, some of the other reports do talk about the national strategic indicators as a more, giving more context to the service in Wales. So what I'd like to know is, you know, what's happened to that information? Why doesn't this report have that contextual information? I know it's an update, but it would have been more helpful for this committee to see where we actually are in terms of the outcome, because that's what the public, the service users focus on. So I wonder if we could explore that issue, please. Thanks.
Colin.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. In terms of those PAMs, their legacy PAMs are not used anymore in terms of an aggregation in comparison for authorities in Welsh Government. So we're not bound to provide that data, albeit the recent meeting, the corporate panel that I attended, we broke down the PIs into individual instant iterations, so low-level access showers, stair lifts, ramps and extensions, to give us a real overview of it in terms of the days rather than aggregation, which is what that PAM you reflected on. But I've agreed going forward in terms of our CPA process, I'll start recording the legacy PAM data as well, so it gives you a review back as well. But I would like to take you to, in terms of the 3.8, in terms of performance, in terms of our numbers itself, we really punch in at a point now where we're maximising our grant. I can't deliver any further than 272 jobs as it stands in terms of the limitation in terms of the capital. The only way I can deliver more is if I have additional capital. So, you know, where, yes, references, time, etc., from referral to delivery is a factor, and I'll pick that up as part of our corporate overview committee going forward on our sort of quarterly in terms of look back and a baseline comparison. That's where we are in terms of our delivery of the mobile. I hope that's answered the question, but, you know, I can definitely bring those figures back. We just, as you notified in the report, there's a move to the system. We moved to a new digital system, which we will need now append that sort of recording to reflect the old legacy PAMs that are not required anymore.
I can come back, Chair. Yeah, I guess we've done away nationally with that framework because I couldn't find any information about it on the web. But in terms of the report, I mean, so for example, on page 3.8 performance, so we look at that table there in terms of total complete certified and a percentage increase. I couldn't work out whether it was a percentage increase from what. I couldn't work out, you know, how many requests we'd had and how many had been completed within a certain time. There's got some numbers there, but it doesn't give that quality. And the issue that most concerned us when we last discussed it, because even though taking the league table, the Welsh League table out of the discussion, there was still an issue about a poor performance. And we can't see from this whether or not that performance has increased or not, or where we're at year on year. So if we're not, okay, we don't have to respond to a Welsh Government requirement around national, where we are in the national league table. But surely from an internal point of view, we'd still want to know how successful or not we are. There's lots of information there about how the service has developed over the last year or so and issues addressed, but I still can't see from that where the performance is. If I'm wrong and other committee members disagree, fine, but I still can't see where the improvement lies in terms of the outcomes, which, as I say, unfortunately is all that matters sometimes. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. As I said, I'd commit I would revert back and we look at the legacy PIs alongside the new PIs we're developing. So once I've collated that data, we'll be able to provide that data to give you that sort of oversight. In terms of our DFGs, when we break them down into sort of eligible differentials, because a DFG is from the point of referral right to the completion. So if you take something in extension with planning permission, etc., it could take up to 6 months minimum. And extension is just as vital as a stairlift, which takes 2 weeks. So what we've tried to do going forward with the new PIs is to break it down to the biggest impact and the quickest in terms of that referral. But, you know, as picked up in CPA and COSC, I will revert back to the old PAM 15 and aggregate all those going forward. So the next report, I'll be able to give you that data alongside the new PIs as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bledsoe again? Or is it a legacy hand? That's okay. Councillor Granville.
Can I firstly second the proposal, Chair, just to get it in order? Can I just thank Martin for the hard and diligent work he's done? I raised this initially in the first audit committee, going back, nearly 2 years now. And one question for me, Chair, is, well, two questions really. Has the time, Martin, improved from the initial application to the job finish in each application? Because that was one of my main concerns, where you had different contractors doing different jobs and it was taking forever. So I hope we've sorted that out. And second part is, are we working in conjunction better with social landlords, or are they putting up a blockage that we can't do such work in their properties? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. In terms of the questions, working with social landlords, from that context, the B2C have now been given their own PAG, which is equivalent to our DFG funding. So my expectation is, as at the point of cut-off, they'll take full responsibility in terms of those requirements of our adaptations. There are, obviously, we've gone through a period where, you know, if you can see from the table, 2021, only 75 certified, and that was down to COVID. There was no access into the things. So we do have a backlog in terms of number of jobs, etc., which we're working through, and that's where I'll have to pick up with the additional data in terms of that time. You know, consequently, once a referral is active and live in terms of our procurement process, in terms of safeguarding us, as I said, a stairlift is 2 weeks. A low-level access shower, we're talking 12 weeks at a maximum, and then extension, we're looking at 3 months. So that's where we are, and our core sort of delivery is around stairlifts and low-level access showers, as you can imagine, in terms of our big input, and the need is growing. You know, the number of applications coming in, but what I'll do is I'll add some value to the table to give you that view in terms of the growing demand on the service as well across those different sort of adaptations.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Any comments? No, I've got a comment to make. I think you should be very proud of this, the improvements you've made as an authority. DFGs are always a big issue in most authorities, delivery, trying to get the staff in the OTs, the professionals and that. And I think, you know, it's a credit to the authority that you've actually spent your budget, and what you're asking for is more money. I think, you know, if on a performance related thing, I think that proves dividends there in regards to what you've delivered. You know, if you weren't spending your capital monies, then maybe we should be criticising you. But I think to actually say we spent out this year, we can't do any more because we need more money, I think is a credit to you and your team of people. So I think that's very well done. In my view, I don't believe we should see this again as a governance and audit committee, because I think you've satisfied the requirements. I hear what Colin says, but I think this matter just needs to go back to its usual scrutiny committee format. If it's COS or wherever it needs to go on a 6 monthly, or on a 6 monthly basis, or wherever how you want to see it. And if there's another issue then or a blip, then you can send it back to us. But in governance terms, to spend all your money, I think is a credit. It really is. And I think the people who benefit is, as you said, the citizens of the county borough. You must be doing it on time. You must be hitting those performance measures. I'm sure there are people out there who are waiting, but they're only waiting because you haven't got any money. So for me, I think, as you quite rightly say, it's been moved that we note the progress to date and the improvement of the DFC service and the current position. But for me, I believe it should go to COS. Sorry, Alex, again, a little bit more work, or wherever it's got to go. And for them to monitor it from now on. I don't think it's a matter for us to monitor, because I think you've addressed the issues in reality, in my mind. Yeah, well, they are. So that's where we're at. So the recommendation is there. It's been moved and seconded. Obviously, you didn't have it that it goes back to COS now and not back to here. So hopefully you accept that, whoever moved and seconded. Anyone against? No, that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. Agenda item 14, which is the forward work programme, 23-24, 24-25. Deb?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Quite quickly, hopefully. So we can conclude the meeting. So in terms of the report, it outlines the remaining items for the forward work programme for 23-24, and as per committee's request last time, a draft forward work programme for 2024-25. Obviously mindful of some of the conversations we've had today, so including for 23-24, which is set out in the table in paragraph 3.1. Also, a lessons learnt report from in respect of this audit of the statement of accounts. So just a paper to come back on that one as well. And an extra meeting whenever that can be arranged in respect of the internal audit recommendation monitoring. So the, as I say, 3.1 sets out the remaining items for the meeting in April. And then attached to Appendix A then is a draft forward work programme for the coming municipal year. So just to take to the recommendations for the committee to approve both the remaining programme for this year and the draft programme for the next municipal year.
Yeah, the only other item in 18th is the cyber issue. If it's not going to be covered in Andrew report,
okay,
may need to be just a separate item.
Yeah,
just
okay.
to update. Any questions? No. Any comments? No. Got the recommendation then that we approve the updated forward work programme for 23-24, subject to the.
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Anyone against? No. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 15. Any urgent items? I have no urgent items, and I'd just like to say, can I thank you all for staying the distance? It's been quite a long meeting today. Thank you everyone for your contributions, and we'll see you all in February now for a very interesting meeting. Thank you all. Meeting is now closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.